What's up, everyone? It's 2 p.m. on a Wednesday afternoon, which means you're tuning in to Cannabis Legalization News. I'm producer Lauren, and today we're joined by Vince Ning from NABIS out in California. But first, we do have to get into a little bit of cannabis legalization news. So, Miggy and Tom, what's happening?
Hey, hi, Lauren. How was your week?
Pretty smooth. How about you guys?
You know, it seems like every day is the same. I get up, get home, go to a home day. I'm essential, and then go home. It's amazing. But you know, I'm healthy. Looks like you're healthy. Miggy's, you good?
Alive.
Awesome, man. Hey, what happened in cannabis news this week over your in your world?
Well, we still don't have home deliveries, which you would think by now, Washington State, one of the first states that had the pandemic, you know, you think the regulatory bodies would say, hey, let's do home deliveries. No, nothing yet. They've still pandered to the liquor board or the liquor person. So, yeah, we're still in the same stagnant space. Not much is going on. Though today, 10 years ago, Jack the Hair died, and I will be doing other content later on for us.
Yeah, tune into the Jack Hair tribute. 10 years today, he passed away. Yeah, and we don't have home delivery either in Illinois, but they do have a bill. You see, like sometimes you have to amend the law to make sure that you can actually get those ends that you want. And this is one of those because the delivery is usually held by the dispensary license, and then they have to have the authority to do it. In our law, it says that they can't. And then you said you had the liquor and tobacco board over in Washington State. Can they just change it through regulation, or they need legislation, an actual mandatory provision?
So it's kind of an ambiguous type scenario. I mean, they got the dream job where you can kind of brush everything off. That's like, well, we don't know about this, because really in the beginning, they created the infrastructure for business, right? As far as seed to sell, rules for like L&I and shit like that, like normal business stuff that was never been part of the cannabis infrastructure. But they still were in the beginning allow like things like Azamax, Eagle 19, you know, pesticides that shouldn't be used in cannabis. That was their failing. So now I think within the past 2 years, they said, we're going to let the U.S., you know, the DA deal with it. But I believe they still haven't passed off the buck or agriculture department, right, here in Washington.
Right.
So,
but there's actually there was some really cool news regarding cannabis legalization that came out of Denver. I'm not sure. And then again, this gets back to what we were just talking about. Sometimes it's the states, sometimes it's the communities. How does the regulation work? And in Illinois, they actually have prohibited the ability for delivery. So that's why it takes an amendment. But here, Denver City Council approves a new cannabis business research and development license. So a new R&D type of license has been you know, created by Denver, which I think is really, really fascinating, because since 1970, what has it been illegal to do with cannabis?
Oh yeah, research, definitely.
Yeah,
and you know, we probably could do that here. At least the board could, because that's, I think, as you point that out, the whole license thing, that's really what this board's power is, the license they have over these people, right?
Really?
That's it. You know, and they constantly change the rules. There was a moment where 2-3 years ago, we only have one accrediting body that accredits the labs here. And they tried to tell this lab that they were doing business the wrong way for 10 years. Like, this lab was doing the same thing for 10 years. So somehow in between that 10-year mark, they decided to change the direction. But when it comes to audits and for accreditation, that's not how that works. These are all, they should be suggestions, right? You got to have a process written down. You got to have an SOP, all the just the blatant stuff. Now, your SOP could be wrong. Your SOP could be like, today I'm going to walk in and pee on all the plants.
Yeah, but that sounds like a really bad SOP. I mean, like, so shouldn't your SOP be disqualifying your license if it's like, what's your standard operating procedure? First, we take the rules. Then we get a red pen and say, fuck these rules. You know, don't do that.
Well, no. Well, an SOP, like for like, say, for lab guidances, right? Like, we know there's different types of testing. There's a gas drum, you know, with gas testing and chromatography and all this other stuff. And if, you know, what they were trying to do is say, hey, this is how you're supposed to do it. This is the one way you're supposed to do it. And it doesn't work that way in the scientific world, right?
Well, yeah, and so that everybody's SOPs can be different, but the SOPs still need to be compliant with the regulations that are out there that the producer or that the dispensary is trying to comply with. And it looks like there's been some other cannabis legalization news, but it's not necessarily good, and it's tax related. It kind of the latest tax administration report raises questions for cannabis businesses. Of course it does. Now, more tax audits may be coming, but it's interesting that industry sources predicted that the U.S. legal marijuana industry took in nearly $11 billion in sales in 2018, expected to rise to $13 billion in 2019 and 25 by 2025.
So is that
it's still going to get double taxed is essentially what it is. And then that's real money. I mean, imagine that. All right. So it's all that in sales. So you have to look at it in the amount of sales and know that you're not allowed to deduct all that much from that. You can't really deduct the cost of your employees because that's, IRC 280E. You can't deduct the cost of your rent. You can deduct the cost that you paid for the cannabis. And maybe also we'll ask NABIS when Vince comes on about how they do the pricing model with NABIS, because it looks like it's a distribution business out in California. So how do they address the 280E issue? That's going to be an interesting point to deal with. But if you have those tens of billions of dollars and you only the gross profit on it might come out to be like 70% because so many deductions that other businesses are allowed to deduct are just not considered deductions because it's the cost of trafficking in a Schedule 1 substance, and therefore those deductions are disallowed, as the IRS would call it.
How ridiculous is it, though, that we have this agency that's going to audit and check cannabis industry, but yet they're still not qualified for the 280E? Like, is that the 280E or 180?
It's 280E, but there is. And so, think about running your dispensary. The only thing that you really are doing is you're paying for cannabis, and that's your cost of goods sold, and you put it on the shelves, usually in little buckets and stuff, and then people buy it. So the stuff that you paid for this, that you can deduct because you needed to buy that you needed to buy that good to sell the good. But then the costs that are related to running your business of retailing in that good are not allowed to be deducted. So your employees, your rent, really, these are real costs, your operational costs, anything that's not a part of the cost of goods sold. And that's one of the reasons why on the West Coast, where you used to be able to do bulk flower, people would do pre-rolls because then that employee would count toward cost of goods sold for that time.
So then, but a liquor store, though, all that cost of goods, that service, they can still use that for their advantage, right?
Yeah, every other business is allowed to deduct the cost of their goods sold, the cost of their rent, the cost of their employees, all of that, the cost of their marketing, the cost of their websites, all of those things, like in trafficking and what you find at a gas station, and you go in there and there's Pepsi and there's Snickers bars and all that. All that can be deducted, but because it's 280E, they can't. And then when you're talking about those types of raw numbers, where last year it was probably $13 billion already in Illinois this year, there's been $110 million in adult use sales. So imagine that your markup, your true markup on your cost of goods sold is like any other retail business, 100%. So chop it in half and say, all right, so out of that $110 million, 55 million of it is just what the IRS considers profit. And then, you do the math as to what percentage of that comes out to for your tax liability. And then that's one of the reasons why these dispensaries will just get hit with these huge tax bills.
Well, at the same time, didn't the SBA put out that anybody that touches the flower is not qualified for any loan, which is ridiculous.
For especially for the payment relief program or the payment protection program, the PPP money, that free money that Uncle Sam has just gotten. That's out. But you know what? It's freaking hilarious and an essential business.
Besides cannabis,
what's in a Florida essential?
Oh fuck my life!
Did you see this?
The fucking wrestling. Yeah. Florida, State Florida.
WWE Essential. Oh my gosh. So this isn't fake. I was like, so this really is fake news. And it's like, no, here's the mayor, Orange County Mayor Jerry Demings. Employees in a professional sport and media production with a national audience are exempt from stay-at-home order as long as location is closed to the general public. So it's just like when we were kids. Remember, SummerSlam would be on pay-per-view.
Shit. Have you seen the ones though? Because WWE did put some out with no audience already. They've done some.
Oh yeah.
Have you seen those?
Of course, I don't have TV. I don't have cable. I mean, maybe if they put WWE on Netflix.
Oh, wow. I see. You're a steady streamer of like channels, but I'm still old school. I got an antenna to my TV sometimes, and I watch the news and whatnot. But the WWE, they're still broadcasting with empty audiences, and it's great. It's just, they hear all the anger without the oohs and the ahs. You're going down, and I'm gonna kick your something, and it's just like
no crowd noise.
It's all theatrics.
Yeah, and then there was that. Did you see the baseball game in Taiwan?
No.
The first baseball game of the 2020 season. So it's the same thing. It's just they're playing baseball empty.
Oh,
players are there. Yeah.
And so
baseball this year, like it's just going to be the maximum tickets, or like are they going to be swiping people's temperatures or spit in this cup? We'll give you your COVID test as you leave. I'm sorry, sir, you tested positive. You're quarantined. Yeah.
Well, when the groups get that big, I mean, to get back to where we were at, I think eventually we're going to have to do shit like that.
Oh no, man! Remember that shoe bomber? America's crazy. All right. So you remember that shoe bomber? We're still taking our shoes off before we get on an airplane.
Yeah. That's true.
All right. And so like those, they're installed them all in the post office and they're installing them everywhere else. The social distancing protocols and lines and all that stuff, that ain't going away. And if anything, it's probably going to get weirder and worse. They haven't started opening it up yet. Think of all the crappy chicanery that they're going to have when we start opening it up. I mean, right now, when everybody just stays at home, it's what they call stasis.
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm just saying, to get back to where we're at, we're going to have what everybody's going to be calling the new normal, right? Like the temperature check-in and if they come up to a test some way, and hopefully they do, because until they do, we ain't doing shit like we used to.
Yeah, that COVID don't play.
This is pretty much it. And then speaking of, I was watching Josh's podcast about the market, and he was talking about how I mentioned the other day how people like to smoke and drink during sad times and bad times, or in good times.
Recession proof. Yeah,
I think cannabis is going to be one of those markets that right now, all the Canadian people are downsizing and whatnot. It's all bad business. These guys got so much money at one time and didn't have a real plan. Because you have to wait for the plant to grow. And then you can actually, know what network you got or whatever. I think. I don't know.
Yeah, there are capital requirements to get into the game, and then there are procedural requirements to stay in the game and operational hurdles that everybody has to do, all while maintaining an eye on brand. It's a very complicated industry, very complex, and I think at the core of it is oversimplification by people like us who grow a plant and they're like, I can do this.
Yeah. But I wonder how many 1,200 specials there'll be this 420.
Oh man, there's gonna be a lot of 1,200 specials, and join us on our 420. We're gonna do an Ask Me Anything with we'll talk to the audience. So what questions do they have? That's going to be a lot of fun. There's 20 of them watching now, right?
Well, I always find it. This is more people than I thought would be watching us. Two old farts who fucking. I mean, I just like to write and was like a cheerleader for fucking weed, and here we are now, just like shooting the shit on YouTube's and
still cheerleading for fucking weed.
Well, because we're still, can't believe I have to still fight for this shit.
So I was talking to a client earlier, and they're like, "So when's this all gonna go away?" And I'm like, "Well, it's not gonna go away. It's still gonna be highly regulated. We can just hope the federal regulation goes away." And I'm thinking, dude, this might be a pretty bad recession. We just shut down the economy for 6 weeks, and it's probably going to be shut down for another month. It could be May 15th. And our hometown is already reporting a net loss in its budget, a budget hole of $50 million. So if every town in America has a budget hole so big they can't fill it, first off, there's going to be a lot more cannabis legalization in the future, next year especially. But that recession might be real painful. And
oh no, I agree, dude. I hate it's not happy talk, but this is also real talk where this $1,200 check that everybody's gonna get. I mean, it's a piss in a bucket. It's and America is a service industry. We don't make widgets. We service, and I'm lucky enough as a technician where the overlock roll bars will always need me. Like somebody's got to fix the machine.
That's right. But the server's failed. Go replay it. Unplug it. Plug it back in.
Yeah, I mean, I might be turning shit half the day on and off, but god damn it, I trained for 20 years for this point. But yeah, no, it's unfortunate, man. Waiters, waitresses, mechanics. It's even here in Seattle. There's now a new limit of 15 people on a bus. So this is getting real. Where they're trying to contain it. People keep thinking it's some sort of weird magical hoax, but no, it's a scary little fucking virus that you can't see or find, and it gets you. Like, I honestly think I had it. I honestly think if I didn't have it and it gets worse, I'm fucking anyways.
That, you may have had it. But then again, one day we're going to get you tested, because everybody's going to have to get tested. And they might even think if that's going to be the new passport TSA pre-check. I'm sorry. Have you been tested for COVID-19? Oh, yeah, I already have it. I have the antibodies. Oh, right this way.
I'm just saying, keep my $1,200 check. Give me a fucking test. That would give me a whirl of just rest in my head right now. I'm still paranoid and geeked out, but the same sense, I think I had it, so I'm having a little more confidence above everybody else.
Yeah, and I like being in a rural undisclosed location, aka Peoria, Illinois, and it's not so bad. We should really bring in on NABIS, because he's got a fascinating business regarding cannabis distribution and the methods there. Well, let's talk about that business model. It's a whole different area of the business model, aside from production, of course, cultivation, and then retail, or the dispensing of the cannabis.
Plus analytics.
It's huge. Vince, thanks for joining us, man.
Hey, yeah, thanks for having me on the show. Sort of listening in on your guys' earlier conversation. It was all very fascinating to see what you guys are seeing in other states.
Yeah, well, every state's a little different. Everybody tries to do it their own way, and it's kind of like the coronavirus in the sense that there's no federal guidance, there's no leadership coming from there, so we're all trying to figure it out.
Yeah,
and nobody's coming to help. And so in Illinois, we have a transporter license, and I saw that NABIS is a distribution system. What does that mean? Can you explain it?
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit the nail right on the head there. As a distribution business, you can cut it up in many ways. I think traditionally, distribution involves the buying and sale of different products. So whether it be food and beverage, or alcohol, or tobacco, or pharmaceuticals, whatever it is, distributors sort of serve as that middleman layer that helps with A, transportation, B, with sales, and then you can keep going up the stack with like marketing and assortment and technology and things like that. For us at NABIS, we focus on very specifically like the logistics and storage aspect of it, storage and distribution, as well as the technology aspect. And we hope to get into other dimensions of the distribution services business as we continue to grow. But given what we saw initially in the industry, I started this business about 2 years ago, and it was right around the time of January 1st, 2018, when legal or recreational cannabis became legal in California, and just sort of seeing all the projections and all the demand, consumer demand that was about to flow into the market. It was one of those things where we knew that the current infrastructure of the supply chain wasn't going to hold up, and so we sort of set out to building the sort of at least the bare metal, like logistical infrastructural layer to help brands in the supply side get their products out to market and making it easier to sort of service the new consumer demand that was about to pour in. And so, for us, more specifically, we offer a distribution service that helps brands ship cannabis products, final packaged cannabis products out to dispensaries across the state. We work with over 80 different brands now. A lot of the top tier ones you guys might have heard of are, Cookies or Dosis, Ember Valley, Henry's. And so, we ship their products out. We probably ship around $80 to $90 million worth of wholesale products a year now out across the state of California, pretty much to every dispensary in the state, dispensary and delivery business. And so as we continue to grow and scale, a lot of the technological aspect helps us automate, the operational challenges that are sort of nuanced and new to this industry that don't exist in others.
Yeah. Well, tell us about your and your founder's educational backgrounds.
Sure. Yeah. We don't come from cannabis, but we've always had sort of a personal passion and joy for the product. Prior to this, both of our backgrounds come from Silicon Valley tech. So we were actually childhood best friends growing up since we were like 13.
You guys coded your first loops together.
Pretty much. And smoked our first J together. So,
cool.
yeah.
Well,
so
Neat. Now then, I guess the questions that I would have would turn toward like, well, how are you licensed? And then how does IRC 280E figure into your revenue numbers?
Yeah. So as far as licensing structure, we have a Type 11 California distribution license for both medical and recreational. From there, as far as 280E goes, that allows us to sort of ship products. So in California, you actually have to own a distribution license in order to ship products across the state. So even if you're a cultivator, a manufacturer, a retailer, whatever it is, if you have products in your warehouse or in your inventory, you can't actually move it unless you find a licensed distributor or you get your own license. And as far as 280E, the way our business model is set up, we try to stay as capital efficient and light as possible from like a working capital perspective. So for us, we actually ship everything on consignment, much like many other sort of D2C models out there, except for us, it's a B2B model where we ship from supply side, from the brands to dispensaries on the retail side. And so, we'll help with the storage and the shipping, but everything is on consignment. So we charge basically a transportation fee. So as it pertains to 280E, our COGS, or cost of goods sold, actually pertains to the delivery drivers, the vehicles, the gas, and the insurance, and like most things that you would consider an operational cost for a normal traditional distribution business, where in a traditional distribution business, the COGS are mainly just the product, the cost of the product. Mm-hmm. We don't buy and sell the product, we charge a transportation service. And so everything that filters into what normally would be an operational cost is actually our cost of goods sold.
That's fascinating. And that's kind of how I was like telling people that they're probably going to have to do the transportation license in the state of Illinois, just explaining to them like, well, you have this, catch 22 or this conundrum where traditionally, if you're a wholesaler, you're that middleman that really is brokeraging in the wholesale price to the retail price. And you can kind of take your little cut as the distributor, but that would literally be trafficking in Schedule 1 substance, and therefore you would not be able to deduct the cost of carrying on that operation and only your cost of goods sold. So by creating that difference where you're going to do a service fee, kind of like a UPS model, or you're the post office a little bit in that price, but then larger, like your COGS are then, the car. The software that you need and all these other things, but you really don't have goods. I mean, like you're not selling a good. So that's advanced tax planning that you have to do in this industry just to even get into it. And so if the rules were different and IRC 280 wasn't there, your business model would literally be different.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, I think, we try to stay true to 280, like try to play the 280E game a bit. And then on top of that, even, you guys were sort of discussing the capital needs of this industry, to pour so much money into just inventory is actually not such a great use of working capital for us as a logistics business. Traditionally as a distributor, you would buy and sell the product. And, for that, there's different municipalities all charge different types of gross receipts tax, and that would ding us pretty hard there too. And so we try to float as little of the cost of products, or actually we don't float any of it through our financials, mainly for tax reasons and working capital reasons.
Watching the video, your guys' structure you guys made me think of like you're the Amazon of weed.
Yeah.
Like everybody stores it in one spot and you kind of relocate it from there.
Exactly. Yeah. So we have fulfillment centers all across California that help us service different regions of the state. And then we have about 35 different delivery trucks that sort of operate in tandem with the fulfillment centers on a hub and spoke model to pick up products from, suppliers, and then B, we sort of store it, shelve it, help with the batch testing, and then finally, when an order comes through our system, we'll pick and pack and ship it. And then on the back end, we also handle the collections process. So, just mainly because banking is such a big issue in the industry, most of the payments happen in cash, in which there are certain logistical issues to collecting payment too. So, you know, a lot of brands and our customers rely on us for collection of payment too. And so, like, you know, whereas like a traditional marketplace maybe that operates online, you would just be able to pay your vendor directly through ACH. You know, for us, like, we have to go pick up the payment, schedule it with the guy who has control of the money at the dispensary. You know,
buy guns. Don't forget to have guns. We could talk about the how much security do you have that goes into these transportation vehicles?
Yeah, I mean, it's quite a bit. I mean, our security and compliance line items on our P&L are very high compared to normal industries. From a security standpoint, all of our vehicles are not only upfitted to certain governmental compliance and cannabis compliance regulation standards, but, you know, we have secured caging, we have a safe that's sort of deposit only and bolted down in the cargo portion of the vehicle, GPS trackers on every vehicle, and more. And so when it comes to you know, cash and product, I think mainly thieves and criminals are really targeting the cash, because product, even though there's a black market, I think it's still high risk, but definitely not as high as cash is. That stuff's like untrackable these days. You know, there's Metrc as far as like a track and trace compliance standard that every product that sits in the bed of our truck is you know, Metrc tagged. And so if you try to sell that thing on the black market, it's traceable. And so it's mainly the cash that people are targeting. And then at our facilities, we have armed guards that operate around the clock too.
Yeah, I mean, even if they try to hustle the product on the side, they're not going to get as much. And that's the one thing I've always joked about, like regulation and recreational marijuana is there's no money in this for people. Like back in the day when I was younger, you know, I could buy a quarter pound, sell nickel and dime and make a couple hundred at the end. But that's for an 18-year-old, you know, or 20-year-old, not a 46-year-old guy trying to make rent and pay internet and all the other stuff. I mean, it's a structured business that you happen to face now. The security that you guys for your van, is that was that implemented by the California? Like, I'm just curious if California is actually like concerned about the transportation safety of the person, you know, when it comes to money and cannabis.
Yeah, I mean, it largely is dictated in the rules and regulations of cannabis distribution, and so you know, we sort of built it around that model. And so a lot of the things that I mentioned earlier are actually mandated requirements as far as delivery truck specs, and then as far as delivery drivers, you know, that's sort of they also make sure that you know, every driver is actually a W-2 employee. And that gives certain protections to employees that 1099 drivers wouldn't get. So, you know, we pay for their gas, we pay for their workers' comp insurance, we pay for their health insurance now that we have over 50 employees. And, you know, there's things like that.
Expenses add up, don't they?
They do add up.
And then you're absolutely right. And that's how, because we're still kind of in the phase of the transportation license here in Illinois. And then somebody asked, does California have BioTrack? And I'm not sure if you've heard of BioTrack, Vince, but no. BioTrack is in Illinois, and that's the standard. And out west, they have Metrc. And so do you have custom software that integrates with Metrc?
We do, yeah. We have software that integrates with Metrc and their API, not BioTrack though.
Have you tried to contact BioTrack to get access to their API?
No, we haven't. I've
tried to contact, because I got other people that are like, because the Metrc as an open source construct, so that because it's a fairly complex database. You know, it's a database and it shows the story of that plant.
Yep.
Okay, and so they got the contract from the state, so they got to get this monopoly of setting a standard. But then they at least allowed other people to patch in and create their product, like yours or Green Bits or Blaze. But BioTrack over in Illinois, it's like, all right, well, do you integrate with it? No. Well, let's contact them. Crickets.
Nothing.
Well, like, think about it from a standpoint of just being like a business standpoint.
Yeah.
If we do nothing, we'll corner this whole state.
Yep.
But to integrate with that program is necessary for people like Vince to. I mean, it would just benefit everybody.
Well, this is one of the things. Then it comes back to the advocacy of the legislation, and so it's like, look, I'm glad that BioTrack has gotten its 1-year monopoly. That is awesome. They are going to be the Google in this field now, because just like your bank account, I'm not going to sit up and be like, you know what? I don't like this one. I'm going to go quit my bank account and move. Very rarely does that happen. And so a lot of the people that are just gotten started, they're going to get accustomed to BioTrack, and then they're going to want to do that. And so if there was a legislative, like right under there, has to be BioTrack approved. BioTrack must provide API access to third-party vendors.
Yeah.
You know? And so I'm going to start lobbying for that amendment in Illinois' law.
Yeah.
But one question is, does your distribution license allow you to have product in a distribution center?
Yes. So, I mean, that's what our license allows us to do is.
I don't think ours does. So like, imagine you were a transporter and you couldn't have a distribution center.
Wow. Yeah, no, that's pretty impossible. You'd have to do like point to point, and it would totally change your economics.
Well, but I'm reading it, and I'm reading, and it's not in there. And so I'm like, okay, but then at the same time, I really doubt. I really doubt the state of Illinois just wants inventory sitting in a warehouse somewhere, and they don't have any tracking as to like, who's guarding that. I mean, they put such focus as to like the protections on the cultivation center and protections on the retail center, but they speak none at all about the warehouse. That's
interesting. Yeah, I mean, I think for California at least, in order to even get a license, including distribution, you need to actually have you need to have a warehouse. Like, you need to have a location, and they actually ask for your specs, like your premise diagram, where you're going to put security cameras and like certain ingresses and egresses of the location in order to even and they have inspectors come in to check your fire code and like everything that of the place where you're going to store the product. And so it's actually the opposite in California, where they actually require you to have a licensed location, and you can't just have like a floating license for like transportation.
That's fascinating. Go ahead, Maggie.
Let's say, what kind of environmental controls do you guys have in your warehouse?
Yeah, so we keep everything at around 67 degrees Fahrenheit, and that's part of our standard operating procedure and our distribution agreements. Most cannabis products do really well, around that temperature. And so that's what we keep it at. And then we also have cold storage units and freezers for, the high concentrate products and the resin. And so those are the sort of two different controls. And then also on the transportation side of things, we have, AC ventilated units for our vehicles that are retrofitted in, so that, when we go on these long haul deliveries across the highway, California is a big state and it gets pretty hot, like once you get down to Southern California. And so, there have been situations where, gummies and things just melt in the truck.
Oh.
We've learned the hard way in a lot of situations. But
it's the only way some people learn.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that's asking that too, but you can transfer edibles. So I guess that's a yes then.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. We can transfer all types of products except for hemp-based products.
Oh. That's a very peculiar prohibition. Again, it gets back down to like how all the states are slightly different, because now in Illinois, the Department of Agriculture said that our producers are allowed to now buy hemp flower from our Illinois hemp farmers or from other hemp farmers in other states and process the hemp into their own products or into products, because a lot of extraction devices are kind of expensive. So now the established growers in Illinois can extract and process our CBD hemp.
Yeah.
But then they're going to have to, like, it's just a point-to-point system, it looks like, on transport, because some of the transporter applications, I was asking, like, well, where does it need to be? And they're like, oh, it doesn't really matter. I'm like, wait, so I don't understand how this license is going to work. So I think our transporter license is probably going to be the one that's going to have a lot of evolution over the course of the next couple of years, just so that it starts to make more value. I mean, I just don't see it doing anything except for being more like a standalone.
Yeah.
Like if I'm growing it, I at least have my truck to like make my delivery,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, that's really interesting. I mean, I think that's how it should be. Like, hemp and cannabis are such close cousins that, it doesn't make sense that hemp is allowed to be federally, nationally legalized and cannabis isn't. Right. I mean, certainly jacks up the value of the product, and it makes for a great product for distribution from our standpoint. But if hemp is, I just don't see I guess the THC and potency levels and things like that are way lower. But I think that it's a very nuanced thing. That
I wouldn't even call them cousins. I would say they're the same plant. I mean, right now it's kind of like you can carry 9mm, but you can't carry BB guns.
Yeah.
You know.
It is silly. It is silly. And I don't understand why it's regulated other than, racism from 40 years ago. And then just whenever there was some type of science, they'll be like, you're just a bad person.
Yeah.
I can't believe that. Like, Jesus is so upset with you right now for using drugs.
Yeah, exactly.
But and that level of ignorance that's just palpable and staring it right in the face is going to keep us having to help our clients and our businesses run at ridiculous amounts of compliance. And then let's imagine, though, that it is federally legal, and so the tax bill isn't as bad.
Yeah.
It's still going to be state regulated. So the state will still require those licenses. Just because prohibition ended and you could buy alcohol didn't mean everybody can sell alcohol,
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it'll be like alcohol or like pharmaceuticals, where it's still a controlled substance that the government wants to track. Because, I mean, it's valuable. Yeah. And, I mean, I think more and more states and legislatures are coming around to it. Today, actually in my home state in Virginia, they just decriminalized marijuana. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we did a video on it a couple days ago when it came out and the governor signed. And so,
cool.
Yeah, and now we kind of gave them the update. And so now we have to see when Virginia, or do they have a medical bill? If they have a medical bill, how does it work?
Yeah.
How can we advocate for full legalization? What type of allocation is of the licenses? Because Illinois has done a really good job of preventing hegemony. So like, except for BioTrack, right? So BioTrack's going to have complete monopoly, but then anybody else is not allowed to own more than 2% of the market cap. Wow. So yeah, there's 500 licenses for dispensing. You can't have more than 10.
Okay.
Right. Wow. There's 150 micro grower licenses. You can't have more than 3.
Got it. Wow.
Hey, Vince, sorry.
Hey,
I'd be remiss, dude. 420 is Monday, and you have analytics for the whole state.
Yeah.
What kind of trending do you see coming up as far as like the what are people going to go for on Monday?
Yeah, I mean, I think to answer your question, a lot of people are going to go for edibles and sort of like the wellness products. I think, just to backstep maybe like a month before this, when all the COVID madness hit, people were sort of just like toilet paper. They were like hoarding weed too. People were going to dispensaries, buying large orders and stockpiling their weed. And then, we saw a huge order volume going up and average order sizes going up. And then it sort of dipped because everyone was sheltered in place. And there was sort of a big snafu in the state around whether or not cannabis businesses were deemed essential or not. And, thankfully that was overturned. And then from there, things started picking back up. But with 420 coming up, I think, people are generally more health conscious given the current pandemic that's around us. And so, I think the inhalables and the smoking and the vapes and things like that are probably not going to be as popular. But, 420, people missed out on St. Patty's Day. People missed out on, all these different ways to celebrate. And, 420 is going to be like the national holiday that everyone can sit at home and achieve and do. So I think edibles and wellness products are going to be on the rise for this 420.
Yeah, we're doing an AMA kind of thing where we'll answer people's questions and smoke with them on that, because we're all stuck inside. I mean, it's not like we can go outside and I go, here, it's your turn on this joint. No, it's not. It's everybody keeps their own joint. It's
exactly
kind of annoying because it used to be something that would be able to bring people together and share,
Yeah.
Well, speaking of, I mean, that was one of the analytics that Josh noticed, was that pre-rolls went down since it started.
Wow.
And right. I personally like pre-rolls just because it's convenience, and like if I get pulled over or anything, I just throw it away, or swallow it.
But think about it, because the COVID symptoms, it's a respiratory illness.
And it's a social thing, though. Pre-rolls are.
So, Vince, have you seen the same? Because you see tracking data as well. So when the shelter-in-place order came up, you was like, bloop. And it's just spiked like that. Have you seen a trade-off in edibles going up and inhalables, I guess, which could also include vape, but typically includes flower, decreasing?
Yeah, no, we certainly have. I mean, I think we're pretty strong in most categories, but in flower in particular, we have a lot of brands from all spectrums, like indoor, greenhouse, outdoor grown flower, mixed light, whatever it is, and across the board. I mean, it's still a huge chunk of the market, don't get me wrong, but it has sort of relatively declined compared to the past 420s, compared to other product types and categories. And it sort of makes sense. I mean, I think, people's psychological stance right now is to, conserve and preserve their health, while still finding different ways to, get fucked up, for lack of better words. Yeah.
To do so safely.
Safely. Yeah.
So are you guys going to try to expand into Illinois with the transporter license?
Yeah, it's definitely a target for us. I think as far as our strategy goes, we, and this sort of also doubled back during the COVID crisis. We really wanted to focus on California, at least for the foreseeable future. It's such a big market. Right now we ship about 1 in 15 products in the state. But that just means there's so much more room to grow. As we continue to do that, we're going to be pretty opportunistic about getting into other states. The sort of big friction points are really just the licensing. Illinois has those caps, and most of them are
transporters, though. Transporters unlimited. So transporters more along the line of the licenses that they have out west, where there's just really no limit, or the municipality sets the limit. Right. And the transporters on an annualized basis. So it seems like every year you can kind of jump in, but yeah, I mean, I've done a lot of them. We'll see how they turn out here in a few months when they actually grade them. Yeah, no, I mean, I think it'll definitely be an exciting market for the cannabis world. I think with Chicago, and there's a bunch of colleges around there as well, and the demographic, I think, is right. And the governor seems to be a very strong proponent of it. And so I think I think it's going to be a good market. I think for us, like as far as our expansion opportunities go, it's the licensing execution risk, but then apart from that, it's also that we have to pour forth a decent amount of capital expenditure into building up the warehouses, getting the trucks, hiring a team. The software is pretty translatable, but apart from that, it does take a big lift on capital to get a new zone, to get a new region up. And right now, the sort of funding climate and the capital markets aren't so great. And so we're just sort of especially for those more speculative. Now, you have how many? So in 2018, you said you really hit your sweet spot because that's when California went adult use recreational. Right. How long back can you show the pro formas if I'm an accredited investor poring over your private placement memorandum?
Yeah, I mean we operated fully legally in the medical market before that. So
good.
So we started around like July of 2017, and it was really just like me and my co-founder doing deliveries out of the back of our vehicles. There was no real the licensing structure had not been released yet, and it was mainly operating on a collective model. And so, people were basically I was basically just like a hired driver as part of someone's company, like a friend's company, actually, who distributed pre-rolls across the state. And, it was a way for me to get involved in the industry and meet people. And then it sort of quickly turned into a business just because, they needed help with deliveries, and along with many others.
Vince, you mentioned earlier that you had 50 employees. Now, is that usually drivers, or is that the whole company right now?
The whole company. So the whole company has about 80 employees. Drivers, we probably have about 25, 30 flexible drivers that are all W-2, but are paid hourly. And then the remainder of the company, is full-time.
So as an auxiliary cannabis business, you're able to support 80 people as far as like their, food, rent, housing. I mean, you're a living wage for 80 people just off of cannabis. Now, how has this COVID issue affected your business?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think, we were a bit uncertain of how it would affect our business at the very early onset. And frankly speaking, we were hearing all sorts of rumors around like, the government potentially declaring martial law or things like that. And we were like, well, if we can't operate, then, we're going to be dead in the water in like several months. And so, we just had to sort of tighten up our operations and change up our delivery schedules. So, a lot of that has been affected due to the COVID crisis. However, with cannabis being an essential business, that's been a huge boon to our industry. I think the people in this industry are generally pretty resilient, having come out of, the illicit market into the medical market, into the collective model, and now into the sort of rec market, and fighting all these regulations. It's and the general, I guess, just the public stigma around it. I think this is just another one of those.
Here in California, I thought everybody loved weed and there was absolutely no stigma about it. Now,
This is
full
true.
disclosure, I have not been to California since 1995.
Yeah, I mean, it's true. I think people here openly smoke weed. You know, it's in parks, it's on the sidewalks, but at the end of the day, I think you know, back before like 2018, you could still get charged for it. But you know, it was pretty easy to get a medical license or a medical card.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there were services where you could just call a, you know, stay-at-home like a teledoctor, and then he would ask you if you had trouble sleeping or if you were stressed at work, and you just answered yes to like 3 questions over a video chat. He would send you a medical card, and then you could walk into a dispensary and buy weed. So it had a little bit of friction, but it really wasn't much.
Well, you know, California still has, like, you would think it's just a big hippy dippy. What is that?
Literally where the Grateful Dead came from.
Well, what's that? Was a skateboard movie, Dog Days, right? Because that's where I'm from. I'm from Oceanside. I grew up from that area.
Cool.
But San Diego is still run by very conservative people. Like, they were fighting dispensaries. It's the whole "not in my backyard" syndrome, which some of these people have still. But you know, you're in LA area. Where are you at?
I'm in San Francisco right now, and so this is our corporate headquarters. So we don't really operate any sort of cannabis activities here. And then in Oakland and in LA, we have 2 warehouses, and that's where all the product is and all the operations happen.
I think it's just great that you can provide a living wage for a bunch of people as a cannabis auxiliary business.
Yeah, no, it's definitely it's been tough. I mean, I think just growing the business and everything, it's we've had to and being operational. I think from our background, we were in the tech industry where everything is online, and so getting into a business that has a huge physical component was new, and you know, I think I guess refreshing for us. And so it's been pretty fun. I mean, we don't see it as a burden, at least.
Software is everywhere now, and then of course you just have more data points that are just moving.
Yeah, exactly. I think in a lot of ways, like a lot of the other like headset or BDS analytics, like not to bash on them or anything, but they pay for data from POS systems and things like that. We in our business model, we actually get data for free while making money doing deliveries. So it's like a sweet little trick that we have to collect all this information.
Yeah, some companies will actually write scripts and then they'll have a database of all these websites that are dispensaries, and then they'll just scrape the dispensaries' websites to reverse engineer the inventory of the actual dispensary, because that's the only way they can see that data coming in. You would be like, how many are moving? Oh, we're moving 30 units of cookies. We're moving this exactly from A to B, you know?
Exactly.
So that is a fascinating aspect of the information. I'm going to have to look at California's law regarding their warehouse facility and like relate it to the transportation license, because I didn't see that the transportation license in Illinois had the right to create a warehouse, you know, because they put such a stress as to your vault that you have where you're going to store your cannabis product, whether you're talking about your kitchen, because like we have an infusing license, your cultivation, so you know the growing after you've cured it and put it into package so it's actually flower ready to go, and then the dispensaries, they also need to have a vault. And I'm like, wait, so I can just get like a transport license and a Morton and a garage? All right, that's weird.
Yeah. I mean, when we looked into getting different licenses, like we sort of already had this organically growing distribution model from, you know, the brands that were, you know, just carpooling their product with us across the state at the time. But, you know, when the licenses came out, we did an evaluation of like what licenses we wanted. And distribution was certainly the one that was the most scalable one. With retail, you know, you can only have such a big space, and, you know, it's very hyper location dependent, and that would lead to a lot of your success. And then the second was, you know, I guess like cultivation, and, you know, that was something we saw as as something over time would become a commodity and where the margins would shrink. And on the manufacturing and branding side, that was something that definitely. It's fickle. Yeah. I mean, there's so many brands that come and go, and, you know, to their credit, I mean, I think a lot of them have done a fantastic job, like cookies, for instance. But, you know, for us, like being in distribution, it was we got to manage like a portfolio of brands. And so by also doing this consignment shipping model, it allows us to be able to swap brands in and out and not really tether ourselves to one segment of the market. When, for instance, right now things are changing from flower to edibles, we can always move to and shift focus there and ship those kinds of products. And, you know, with distribution, we got our first space, which was like 500 square feet, and it was a little closet, and we were shipping across the entire state. And so it definitely took a lot less capital to get up off the ground, as long as you're willing to hustle a bit to get there.
How long was those drives?
Yeah, we would go like every other day. I would go like once a week to LA and San Diego. Yeah, I mean, I was at the time I was sort of newish to California, and so I didn't really I hadn't seen much of it, and so I got to see good amount of the countryside of California, which was
a lot of traffic, dude.
Yeah, it is a lot of traffic, but yeah, it's fun.
Have you converted your app to or your website to an app yet for your customers to make it a little easier to interface?
Not yet. It's still just a web portal. You know, I think in a lot of ways we sort of had to build out. We sort of had to build out a lot of our tools as we built out our operations, just because like the regs kept changing, emergency regs kept coming in every 6 months. And so we've never had the time to like build out a secondary product for mobile. Always just had to keep attaching bells and whistles to
that's like the method of saying like describing software. You know, like,
exactly.
So like you never just came out with the whole reinvention. There was no time. We just shoehorned this out there.
Well, that's what I was asking, because these guys are actual like, you know, super nerds who can get into the code and all that stuff.
But that's one of the things that he didn't even mention. I'm like, yeah, but you see, as those brands come and go on all that stuff, your stuff, it's just like now we don't have, you know, 5 data points. 25 data points, 4,000 data. Like the value of your property continues to go up because it's more used. And so because of that, your ability to be able to predict trends and then to see what you probably should start stocking, because you can see things that start to move, be like, all right, well, we need to expose more people to this brand. We need to trim that brand.
Yep.
This is the most optimal, you know, because like even UPS and FedEx, they will have algorithms that are trying to find out if they should make a left turn or a right turn.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Yeah.
I don't know if this is true, but I heard FedEx implemented this algorithm where they only take right turns or something.
I've heard that one. I can't remember if it was FedEx or UPS, but I've heard there's some type of algorithm out there that they only do that simply because it reduced fuel expense or it also saved time. One of those two.
Yeah. And at that scale, like any 1% difference is like millions of dollars. So
right.
Oh, totally.
But that's the fascinating aspect of the business model that I saw from you. And I'm like, all right, well, interesting. And it'd be interesting to see more about how you guys approach your pricing. And I mean, the kind of consignment model looks like you're almost doing the delivery free, to be honest.
Yeah, well, so for us, we charge like a normal distributor, but basically half the price. So we charge a percentage pricing model. And ultimately, every time we deliver a product, it's kind of like DoorDash or Uber Eats, like, you know, take a percentage. And then if that percentage doesn't meet the order minimum, then we'll charge that flat rate minimum to have like a floor for ourselves. Because every time we do a delivery, even if it's for like one sample of a vape product out to like Shasta or Redding or Humboldt or something like that from Oakland, it still costs us gas and time. And so for us, like we have to charge like a good meaty minimum. And so for us, like, you know, we still get the benefit of, you know, being able to charge a percentage rate for delivering products across the state. And so ultimately what we want to be able to do is, this is sort of like the first step of our strategy, is to just get the infrastructure locked down. And now that we have all these brands and all these retailers in our network, it's really about layering on additional services, like, for instance, helping out on the sales side with a marketplace and being able to drive demand for these products. And the next is perhaps offering financing solutions, because we handle the collections and we have the creditworthiness of retailers. And so we want to be able to, you know, ultimately help brands launch as fast as possible and give them a full tool set for them to be able to understand their customer.
Oh, that's huge. Distribution is huge.
Yeah.
Vince, thank you so much for joining us today. Where can we go to follow and find NABIS?
Yeah, you can find us on Instagram. The handle is GetNabis, GetNabis. And you can go to nabis.com, NABIS.com, to find out more about our distribution services and, perhaps work together.
Sweet. Awesome. Thanks for tuning in for another episode of Cannabis Legalization News. Make sure you like and subscribe to keep up with all cannabis legalization news. This Sunday, we're going to have an OG cannabis activist. I think they opened up their organization in like 95. So we're going to talk to them.
Wow.
That's going to be dope. And of course, 420, we got some exciting things
420.
planned. So make sure you like and subscribe. We'll see you guys on Sunday.
See you guys. Happy 420.
Happy
420.
420. Thanks, Vince.